Hey guys, in this video we're going to be creating a fake REST API using something called JSON-Server. So why would you want a fake REST API? Well, when you're building, let's say, Angular applications or React applications, anything on the front end where you need to connect to something on the back end, you need some kind of server with some data. You may not want to at that time, or you may not even know how to create a backend using, setting up a server with Express and routes and connecting to a database and all that stuff. This gives you a really easy option to kind of mimic that entire functionality, that entire backend, so you can strictly focus on your React app or whatever it is you're working on. All right, now there is a remote version of this at jasonplaceholder.typicode.com, where you don't have to do anything. You can just make requests to these routes here. You can see you can make post requests and all that, but there are some disadvantages of this. One is that you have to work strictly with their data. Okay, so you may want to use your own data. You probably will want to use your own data. Also, you can make post requests and put requests, but it's not going to update the actual data. Okay, it's not going to let you actually add to their database. Obviously, that wouldn't be a very good idea. Doing this locally, installing it locally, allows you to actually persist it to a JSON file where it can update and it works more like a real backend. All right, so this is something I use all the time, and I have used this in the past in some videos, but I haven't really gone over how to actually create it locally. So that's what we'll be doing in this video. Hopefully you guys can take something from it, and let's get started. This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time job in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. All right, guys, so I think you're going to be kind of surprised of how easy this is to set up. We're basically not even going to have to really write any code at all. So this is the GitHub page. It's typicode/JSON-Server. And there's some good documentation here, actually, as far as the different URL and route options, pagination, sorting the data, things like that. And I'm actually going to create a text file and put it in the description so you guys can download that and you can have the URLs with the correct parameters to sort data and all that. So to install this, very, very easy. We're just going to do npm install JSON-Server. You can install it globally if you want, but I'm not. I'm just going to install it locally. So what I'm going to do is open up Visual Studio Code. That's what I'm using. And I have an empty folder called JSON-Server. Okay, so just create a folder somewhere. And I'm going to use the integrated terminal from Visual Studio Code. You can either do View integrated terminal, or you can just hit Control and then the tilde character, which is to the left of the number 1. And you'll notice that I'm actually using git bash with this instead of PowerShell, which is the default. If you want to do that, just install git bash, and then you can go to Preferences, Settings, and you can add this setting right here, terminal.integrated.shell.windows, and set it to the location of git bash. Okay, so that's, if you want to do that, that's how you do it. Now we're going to install this, but first thing we need to do is we need to create a package.json file, which is basically like a manifest file for Node.js applications. It has the application name, the version, the dependencies, all that stuff. All right, and if I didn't say it already, you do have to have Node.js installed, so just download that, install it. All right, so let's run npm init, and it's just going to ask us some questions. It's going to ask us what we want to call it. JSON-Server is fine. That's the name of the folder, so we'll click enter. Version, that's good. Description, we'll just say test, or I don't know, we'll just say fake REST API for testing. Entry point doesn't matter. We're not even going to have an entry file, so just click enter, and we'll just enter through the rest. All right, so now we have a package.json file, and it should look something like this. So now we need to install JSON-Server, so we'll say npm install --save, which will actually add it to this file, to package.json, and then we're going to say JSON-Server. All right, and once that's installed, it should pop up in this file in the dependencies. All right, so there it is. The current version is 0.11.2. All right, so now that we have that, we need a way to start our server. And if we go back to the documentation, you'll see right here we can run JSON-Server watch and then the link to a file. Okay, not the link, but the name of a JSON file, and that's going to act as our data store. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this as an NPM script so that we don't have to type all that out. So inside of scripts here, we can actually replace the test. We don't need this, but you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to do JSON:server. That's usually what I do. And then let's replace this with JSON-server --watch and then the name of the JSON file, which you can call anything, but we'll stick to db.json. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. Now we need to actually create our data file. So let's create a new file over here in our folder, and we're going to call this db.json. Okay, and this is going to be just a simple JSON file. So we're going to put in our curly braces, and if you don't know anything about JSON, I'd suggest my JSON crash course. I'll link that in the description as well. But basically we're going to have a set of users. Oops, since this is JSON, you need to have your keys and your values wrapped in double quotes. So let's say users, and this is actually going to be an array of users. Okay, so it'll be an array of user objects. So each user is going to have an ID. So let's say we want ID of 1. Let's do first name. I'm not going to type everything out, but just this first one. So first name, let's say John Doe. Let's do, actually, that's the whole name, full name. Let's do just first, and then we'll do last. So last name will be Doe. Let's do email. So we'll just say john@gmail. And let's see, what else did I do? Age, we'll say 34. And what else? And we're also going to have, in addition to users, we're going to have companies. So each user, I want to have a company ID. We're going to actually set up some relationships here. So it's going to have a company ID, and we're going to set that to, we'll set that to 1. Okay. So that's what a user is going to look like. Now I'm just actually going to copy a couple other users and paste them in. So I'm going to put a comma right here and paste these in. Let me just tab this over a little bit. Alright, so we have, let's see, let's just format this a little better. So we have 4 users. We have John Doe, Mark Williams, Sarah Thompson, and Karen Jackson. Okay, they all have the same fields, you know, first name, last name, email, age, and company ID. So that gives us our users. Now for companies, all we have to do is go under this users array, put a comma there, and let's say companies. And that's going to also be an array of objects. So each company will have an ID. So we'll say ID 1, and they'll have a name. So let's say Apple, and they'll have a description. Okay, and I actually have the Apple description. Let me just grab it real quick and paste that in. I'm going to turn on word wrap so you guys can see everything. Let's see. What the hell is it? Toggle word wrap. Alright, so we just have the description of the Apple company. Now I have 2 more companies I want to paste in here. So let's go ahead and put a comma here and paste these in. We have Microsoft and Google. Let's just tab this over. There we go. All right, so we have our users and companies. This is essentially our database. This is what's going to act as our back-end data store. So let's go ahead and save this, and now we should be able to run our server. It should be as easy as that. So let's go down here, and remember we added an npm script of JSON:server, so we should be able to do npm run JSON:server, and that should start it on localhost 3000, port 3000, and it shows you the resources you have, users and companies. So let's go to our browser, and let's go to let's just go to HTTP localhost port 3000 and see what that gives us. So it actually gives us this really nice landing page that shows us the different resources we have, also shows us the different types of requests we can make to our server or to our API. So right here, users, you'll see 4x. It's telling us we have 4 users in our data store. Okay, there's the users we created. And notice the URL is /users. We can also go to localhost 3000/companies, and then we can see our whole database by going to /db. All right, and I'm actually going to make this bigger so you guys can see. Okay, so I want to show you some of the different routes that we can go to kind of do things like format our data. We can limit the data that's returned, things like that. So I'm going to include a link in the description to this file right here. Just make this a little smaller. And this shows you how to do things like filter companies by name, add some limits and pagination if you want to use pagination in your front end, sorting. So let's go ahead and try some of these. So if we want to get a single user, okay, we know we can get all of them if we go to /users, but we can also get a single user by just putting in / and then the ID, and that's going to give us that user. If we go to user /2, we get Mark Williams, which has an ID of 2. Okay, and we can do the same thing with companies. If we go to companies /1, we're going to get the company with the ID of 1. All right, now the way we set up our data in the back end, or in our db.json file, we have relationships. Remember, each user has a company ID field, and that allows us to do things like this. We can go to company /1/users, and it'll give us all the users that work at that company. Okay, so I believe 1 was Apple. Let's go to 2 /users. We have Sarah, and if we go to companies /3, we have Karen. Okay, so this is really helpful, that we're able to use these relationships like this. So we can also filter by fields. In this case, we're going to filter the companies by the name, but of course you could use any field you want. So if we say /companies, and then let's put a question mark, which is saying that we want to add a parameter, and we want to say where name equals Microsoft, obviously it's going to pull up the Microsoft entry. So if we say Apple, it's going to pull up Apple, but we could do this by any field, not just the name. All right, so another thing we can do is we can limit the data. So in this case, we're saying company question mark _ page, and we're going to say we want page 1, and each page should have a limit of 2, okay, of 2 entries. So let's go ahead and grab that, and that's going to give us the first 2, okay, because we're limiting each page to 2. If we want to go to page 2, that should have ID the third one, okay, and if we had a fourth one, that would show here as well, and so on. Okay, so we can limit the data really easily. We can also sort. So if we put question mark and then _sort equals, and then the field we want to sort by, in this case name, and then the order, which could be ascending or descending. So let's grab that. Okay, so we're saying companies, we want to sort by name, and we want it to be ascending. So you see we have Apple, Google, Microsoft. If we wanted it the other way, we could do descending, or DESC, and that'll reverse it. All right, so some really cool stuff you can do here. And for you to build a back end to give you these routes and this functionality would be a lot of work. So it's really good for testing, prototyping, things like that. So we can also search numeric ranges. So in this case, we're going to say age _GTE for greater than or equal to 30. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to give us all the users that are either 30 or older. All right, and then we could add another parameter by putting an ampersand, and then we'll do age _LTE equals 40. So that's less than or equal to 40. So it's going to give us everybody that's in between 30 and 40. All right, and then the last thing I'm going to show you is the full text search. We can add a parameter of Q, and what that's going to do is it's going to search for whatever we have here. It's going to search all the fields. I don't think we have a Paul in our users, so let's just change that to John. So we'll say users, and then we want to add a parameter of Q, and we'll say equals John, and then that's going to find anything that has the word John, okay? And we could just put J, and it's going to find anything that has the letter J inside of it. All right, so you can see that we can do some really powerful things for the amount of work that we put into this, which is basically nothing. All right, now let's see, what did I want to do next? Let's see. let's go ahead and let's make some other types of requests, because up to this point we're just making GET requests. So if we look at our, where are we? Localhost 3000. I'm just going to make this a little smaller. We can make all of these types of requests. So now to make a post request, you could do this through a web form through your application, but we're not going to build an application right now. So what I'm going to do is use something called Postman. Actually, I already have it installed. All right, now Postman is a utility for making HTTP requests. All right, and this is actually a Chrome extension. Just search for Postman Chrome, and you should find it. I'm just going to delete this stuff here. Let's get rid of that. All right, so we're going to make a post request now, and we're going to make it to HTTP localhost port 3000/users. All right, and what I want to do is add a user through this post request. So we're going to go to headers, and we want to specify that the content type is going to be application/JSON. All right, and then for the body, I'm going to choose to enter raw JSON, and let's put in a set of curly braces and put in a user's first name. And I'm just going to set that to Brad, and then we'll do last name, set that to Traversy. Let's do age, which is a number, so we'll just do 35. What else do we have? Email. I'll just say test@test.com, and let's add a company. So remember, we have company ID, and let's say I want to work at let's say Google, so I think that was ID of 3. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. We'll send a request. We get a response back, which is the user, and you'll see that it automatically adds this ID for us, okay, which is a string. Now if we go back and we go to /users, you'll see that I was actually added as a user. So this is something that you can't do with the remote version of this. You can't, it's not going to get saved. So that's definitely a plus. And you'll see that if we go back to our JSON file, it was actually added to that file. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is go back to Postman, and let's try to delete a user. All right, so I'm going to open up a new tab, and we're going to make a delete request now to HTTP localhost port 3000, and let's say /users, and let's get rid of ID 4, which is Karen Jackson. Okay, so if we go ahead and click send, we get back a response of nothing because there's nothing to return. But if we go and reload, you'll see that Karen is now gone. Okay, so we can make delete requests. We can make a patch request to do an update. Let's do that. We'll say users / let's do 3, which is Sarah, and we're going to say headers. Let's change the content type to application/JSON. We'll go to body. We'll say raw, and let's say we just want to update. Let's say she got married, so we want to change her last name. All right, so we'll say last name, and we'll change it to Smith. All right, so I think that should work. Let's send, and now we get Sarah Smith back, and if we go and reload this, you'll see that her last name was updated. So we have a full RESTful API with some nice features, and we did it in I know this video is kind of long, but if you just look at what we did to set this up, it's very, very simple. All right, so let's see. I think that's all I want to do, guys, is just get you set up with that. Let's see. Let's go back to the documentation because I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, a remote schema. So if you don't want to create your own data, if you want to actually use the data from JSON placeholder, you can just add it right here. You can say JSON-Server and then add this URL. So I'm going to copy that, and then what we'll do is go to our package.json file, and I'm going to add another script here. Let's put a comma, and let's say JSON-Server : remote. All right, and then we're going to set that to JSON-Server, and then we're going to just paste that in. So now if we save, and let's stop our server down here with Control C, and instead let's do npm run JSON-Server remote. And now it's going to start up the server, but you'll see we have all of these resources. Okay, so it gives us all this data to work with. And if we go back over to our browser and let's just go to localhost 3000, you'll see all the different resources. We have all these posts, we have comments, 500 comments, albums, photos, users, to-dos, and the whole database. Okay, which is a lot of data to work with. All right, so I think that's going to do it, guys. We're going to stop this here. Hopefully this gave you, some insight into how to do this, and maybe you'll use it in future projects. I actually use it all the time, either the local or the remote, depending on what I'm doing. So thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe. Please leave a like if you liked it, and thanks for watching.